Welcome to the start of Chapter 5. Today we're looking at Section 5.1, which is on the properties of exponents. Now we have about 7 properties to go through. These all need to be in your notebooks. So go ahead and start writing these down. Hit the pause when you need to, and you'll get all of your rules. Now we've done these before, so this is not new to you. First one we're going to look at is called the product rule. Product means you're going to multiply two pieces together, and the rule says when you multiply a to the m times a to the n, you add the powers, m plus n. Sample over here on the right, x to the fourth times x to the fifth. Always leave your x down just one time. You don't put 2x, it's just x, and then you add the powers on the top, 4 plus 5, x to the ninth. The quotient rule is when you're looking at something that would be a fraction. A to the m over a to the n equals a, just write your a down one time, and then this time you subtract your powers, m minus n. And when you're subtracting these, subtract from the top down. So as you look at this first example, x to the fifth over x to the third, write your x down one time, and then 5 minus 3 would be 2x to the second. The third rule we've got is called the power rule. This is when you have one exponent raised to another exponent. Property on this one says it will be a raised to the m times n. So here's your chance to multiply your powers together. X to the fifth and then raised to the third power, multiply 5 times 3, x to the 15th. Your next rules. First up is called the product to a power. In this one, you'll have a product a times b in parentheses, all raised to the m power. Now for this one, you're going to hear me say the phrase, go backwards, backwards. So everything inside the bracket gets raised to that particular power. A to the m times b to the m. In this example, we're going to go backwards, backwards. So we're looking at 4 to the second, x to the second, and then you can clean that up, 16. X to the second. Quotient to a power will be just like product to a power. You're looking at a fraction instead, a over b all raised to the m. Again, you get to go backwards, backwards to everything you see on the inside. A to the m over b to the m. Your sample here, going backwards to both, x to the third over y to the third. The zero rule, anything raised to the 0 power is always 1 no matter what. So anything raised to the 0 power. This whole quantity in the brackets raised to the 0 power means your answer is just 1. And then we've got your negative exponent rule. You are never allowed to keep a negative power. When you see a negative power, what you need to do is take the base and flip that upside down. So you're looking for the reciprocal of that base. The reciprocal of a is 1 over a. Once you have it flipped upside down, then you're using the positive power of that value instead. Our example of x to the minus 3 would become 1 over x, and then instead of negative 3, raised to the positive third power. All right, on this slide I've got several different examples, so I just want you to put it on pause and then go through some of these examples. Turn it back on again and see how you did. First one, 4 to the second raised to the third. This is power raised to another power. We multiply these together. 4 to the 6th power. Now this is not one of the numbers that we'll be looking at for our flashcards, so you can leave this as 4 to the 6th if you do carry that out. 4096. There will be several questions where you are not going to be able to use your calculators. So 4 to the 6th, I wouldn't expect you to remember that one, and you wouldn't need to multiply that one together either. Example number 2 is negative 8 times negative 8 to the third. As long as the bases match, the first term does not have a power on it. You can assume there's a 1 right there. So this is the product property. Negative 8, and then we'll add the powers 1 plus 3 raised to the fourth. 2 over 9 raised to the third power, we go backwards, backwards to both of these. 2 to the third, 9 to the third, 8, and then 9 to the third. When you carry that out, 729. The next one, 6 times 10 to the negative 4 over 9 times 10 to the 7. You could break this apart into two different pieces. We're going to look at the coefficients in the front first. 6 over 9, you could look at this as just a basic fraction that will reduce. 3 goes into both of those. 2 over 3. And then look at the second piece, 10 to the negative 4 over 10 to the 7. You could look at this one as its own piece. Quotient property tells you to subtract your powers. 10 raised to the negative 4 subtract 7 is negative 11. And now you have to know the negative rule, which again, you can't leave negative powers. So the 10 is going to flip upside down, which actually puts it in the bottom. And then it's no longer a negative power. 2 over 3 times 10 to the 11th. Number 5 puts several powers together. Product property says add them together. W to the 5th, W to the negative 8, and W to the 6th. You're just going to add these. 5 plus negative 8, there's negative 3. Negative 3 plus 6 is 3. Question 6, again, we've got a quotient raised to a power, so we're going to go backwards to both of these. C to the negative 2, D to the positive 8. We cannot leave the C where it's at. That's a negative power that has to flip upside down. The reciprocal of that leaves us nothing on the top except a 1. You always have to leave something in the top. So we have 1 on the top, C to the 2nd flipping to the bottom, and D to the 8th is going to stay right where it's at. Next slide. Again, you've got some more questions. You can turn the machine on pause and work through some of them and then come back and see if you're on the right track. All right, this first one, a to the negative 3, b squared over a to the 5th. You've got variables for a that are the same. Another way that you can think about the quotient property, and you'll hear me say this phrase a lot, if it's bigger on the top, keep it on the top, subtract from the top down. If it's bigger on the bottom, keep it on the bottom and subtract from the bottom up. Our a terms has the a larger on the bottom. So I'm going to leave the a on the bottom and I'm going to subtract from the bottom up. 5 minus negative 3 would be 5 plus 3 would be 8. So we have a total of a to the 8th that will end up in the bottom. If you were to use this from the top down, you'll get the exact same answer. A raised to the negative 3 minus 5 would be negative 8. B squared, and you can't leave negative, so it would flip anyway. So you'll get there. Sometimes you just get there faster by looking at the powers, identifying where it's larger. If it's bigger on the bottom, keep it on the bottom and subtract from the bottom up. B squared doesn't have anything to go with it, so that's just going to stay on the top. B squared over a to the 8th. Number 8, we've got several things that we could do here. If you want to work inside your parentheses first, you'll notice that you've got 2 different a terms that can get combined. Bigger on the bottom, I'm going to leave it on the bottom and subtract from the bottom up. 3 minus 2 is 1. I have a plain constant of 2 that's going to stay on the bottom. Our b terms, again, bigger on the bottom, keep it on the bottom, and subtract from the bottom up. 2 subtract negative 1 would be plus plus. 2 plus 1 is 3. And as you notice, I didn't leave anything on the top, so I have to put in a 1 as a placeholder. And this whole quantity is raised to the 3rd power. Now I can go backwards to every single thing that's inside that parenthesis. 1 to the 3rd, 2 to the 3rd. Be careful. Some people look at this really quickly and say 2 to the 3rd is 6. They see 2 and 3 and think 6. 2 to the 3rd power is 8. A to the 3rd. And b to the 9th. Power to a power 3 times 3 would be to the 9th power. Number 9, product property is just adding all of these powers together. Negative 6 plus 5 plus 3. Hopefully you got x squared. Number 10, we have several things that are going to be put together here. This is a product property again. 7 with nothing to go with it is still 7. Y to the 2nd and y to the negative 4 is y to the negative 2. We're going to have to flip that. Z to the 5th, z to the negative 1. 5 plus negative 1 is 4. And then we'll finish it with 7. Z to the 4th. Flip your y term to the bottom. Y stays positive now as y squared. 7 z to the 4th over y squared. Number 11, there looks like an awful lot of stuff in here, but if you notice, it's the entire quantity raised to the 0 power, which means that answer is just 1. And this next one, again, there's a couple ways you could do this. We could go backwards to each thing that we see. S to the 6th over t to the negative 8. You can't leave a negative power, so you'd have to flip that. The t will flip to the top, the s stays right where it's at. And that one's finished. Some people like to start on the inside first and see the negative power and flip that right away. S to the 3rd, t to the 4th, and then it's raised to the 2nd power. Then go backwards, and you'll get the exact same thing as we got right here. So there are multiple ways to get to some of your answers. Hopefully we all end up in the same spot. Last thing I want to remind you about is scientific notation. There will be some of those questions in your homework. Scientific notation, remember, is a number between 1 and 9, the times sign, and then 10 raised to a power. Each of these represent appropriate scientific notation. Your number between 1 and 9, 8.5 here, 1.2 here, the time sign, and then 10 raised to a power. You can do these in pieces. Use your calculator to help you. This would be the one time you can use your calculators to help you. 8.5 times 1.2, 10.2, time sign, and then 10 to the 7th, 10 to the 3rd is the product property. You can just add your powers together. 7 plus 3 is 10 to the 10th. Now, don't think that you're finished with this, because remember, your scientific notation has to have the front number be between 1 and 9. This is not between 1 and 9, so you have to change that first. 1.02, it is now a number between 1 and 9. But since I moved my decimal one place, I have now created a 10 to the 1st that I have to bring in with my other 10 to the 10th. And then I can use my product property, put those together, and I have a correct scientific notation, 1.02 times 10 to the 11th power. All right, that's it for your product, quotient, and all the rest of the properties. Make sure you have all 7 of those in your notebook. I'm going to switch back to that slide very quickly. Here's numbers 4, 5, 6, and 7. You have to have these in your notebooks. We'll be seeing them again in chapter 6, where we'll be looking at these same things but raised to fractional powers. You do need to remember them. You can't use your notebooks for this quiz, remember, so you have to remember all of these properties. Make sure you have them down. You'll be able to practice them quite often throughout the chapter.